My aunt and a man she called Nicholas. My aunt is a kind hearted person, but this ended up causing financial catastrophic disaster. A bit of backstory. For privacy, we're going to call my aunt Jane, and she's been alone for most of her life. She's very much a homebody, and while she works, her life consists of going to work, coming home, living her life inside her apartment. And she's lived in the same apartment for over 15 years. Change is not something she takes openly. She's very routine with her life, and you can set your watch by her schedule. I would call or video chat with her several times a month. She lives in Ohio, and I'm in Washington. So we're not close enough to visit each other, but I care enough to check in with her. She's 62 years old, and she hasn't dated or had anyone in her life for over 20 years. She divorced, and she's lived this isolated life ever since, and she has no children. She works for an insurance company, and on her days off, other than her office orientated job, she loves to just stay home. I love my Aunt Jane deeply, and don't take this wrong when I say this, and I say it out of concern and caring, but for her lifestyle and health, they're very much a concern. She's extremely unhealthy, extremely overweight, and she does no physical movement other than driving to work, sitting at her desk, driving home, and sitting in her apartment to watch TV. Over the years, her weight has ballooned out of control, and it's always been a worry for myself and other family members, but we can't force her to change her lifestyle. So, in a way, me checking in with her is to make sure she's still doing okay. I believe this started around January of last year. Her and I are friends on FB, and she's also on IG. She doesn't post much on her page, but she does frequent IG often and follows a lot of reality TV stars and shows and comments on their pages. Again, she loves TV. She met with this guy named Nicholas on IG. This seemed to have started out as a friendship, which turned into a possible relationship over time. After this whole thing occurred, I was able to read through her messages to see what was happening. So, as I tell this story, please know I'm speaking from what we discovered and telling after the fact. Nicholas had an IG profile which looked to have thousands of followers, and he was following thousands of people. So, if you were to look at his profile as an outsider, he looked very real. There were tons of photos on his profile of himself, which I included in this email. Now, keep in mind, I didn't see his profile until after this all took place. He messaged my Aunt Jane and told her that he thought her profile picture was beautiful. Jane does have her real photo on her IG, along with a handful of photos of herself, but she's never been one to post a bunch of stuff on IG, and I think she mostly used her profile to follow her favorite reality TV shows. Nicholas had told her that he was an engineer, a director on oil rigs. And when he had met her, he told her that he was working on the Gulf of Mexico, but that he lives in Atlanta, Georgia. He had told her that he was originally from Germany, but moved to Atlanta when he went to college, and he just stayed. He had married, but his wife had died from kidney cancer, and he never had any children with his wife. She had passed away 10 years ago. His age was off several times when I read through their chats, as first he said he was 57, then 53. I think he forgot his story, and Jane never noticed, or maybe she did, but just wanted to believe it was all real. Nicholas told her that he was on contract in the Gulf of Mexico working for an oil company, which he said the name was CR Gas Pipeline. He was to be on the Gulf for 2 months and then return to Atlanta before going over to Thailand for a new oil pipeline contract. As an outsider looking in, his story made sense, but then after reading the entire story, there was a lot of inconsistencies. Jane had given him her phone number and she downloaded WhatsApp. The majority of their chats were through that app. He filled her chat log with flowers and love photos, telling her she's the most beautiful woman ever. And Jane would often say to him that she felt ugly and overweight, and no men ever look at her or pay attention. I think he held on to her low self esteem to manipulate her into thinking she had met the man of her dreams. He told her age and size is nothing and the heart matters, and that his love for her was undying, and that he never loved a woman as much as her, even his late wife. He had really laid it on thick. He would message her every morning, and it looked like they had voice chatted late into the night. When I asked her about the voice chats, she said he had a German accent. I had listened to some of their voicemails after this all took place, and it was far from a German man she had been talking to. It took a good month before the whole love thing set in. Once the I love yous were exchanged, he started planning. He promised after he returned from Thailand, he was to fly out to meet her and spend eternity together. He told her that the Gulf of Mexico contract was ending, but he only had a few days before he had to go to Thailand, so he couldn't meet her until he got back from there. He would make her feel so loved, tell her how beautiful she was. She even gave him her home address several times, and flowers and other little gifts were sent. This was really all it took for her to be fully vested in him. During the time he left for Thailand, he said he had arrived there, and he even sent her photos of the hotel room, which I've included. By the way, those photos came from a travel website. This is when things started to become a financial drain for her. Nicholas told my aunt that being in Bangkok, his phone was acting weird, and he said the airport security told him that he has to purchase a new card and load points onto his phone to keep it going in Thailand, otherwise, it would be shut off. This was his first time in Thailand, and he didn't know any better. He asked her for a $500 iTunes gift card, and he said it would give him the ability to keep his phone on so they could talk. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to talk and they would drift apart. For whatever reason, call it insecurity or what, but she was afraid Nicholas would find a beautiful Thai woman and cheat on her. There was a conversation on WhatsApp which was her telling him that Thai women are skinny and pretty, and she wanted him to be in touch daily as she was fearful of losing him. So he basically used this to manipulate her into buying a $500 iTunes card, and he told her in order to stay in touch, she would need to buy him this card as the bank card he had suddenly didn't work. Jane bought him the card and texted it to him, and they did video chat. His side, she said, was always blank, as he said it used too much data to stream a video camera. Jane had bought that excuse and continued to have video chats with him despite his side not being on. They had kept this up for weeks, and he would keep telling her that she would have to buy him more iTunes cards to keep his phone on, as the video chats they had were just eating into his databank. Now, Jane's not wealthy. She has a standard job, and while it's not minimum wage, it's also not a high earning position. She would get by in life, paid her rent and bills, but she was in no uncertain terms wealthy or well off. He would ask her for gift cards here and there, and he then took things further and started to manipulate her more, telling her that he had bought her a wedding ring and he wants to marry her when he returns home and move her into his house in Atlanta. He sent her pictures of his so-called home, and I've also included them in the email. As a side note, the photos of this home in Atlanta is actually a home in Georgia that was featured on a mansion website and TV show. Jane started packing her apartment, and she truly believed that she was going to move to Atlanta as soon as he returned home from Thailand. He sent her photos of the ring that he bought for her, and she truly thought she was going to marry this man. Unfortunately, my aunt, being head over heels in love with this attention, ended up making videos for this man of the adult persuasion. This was totally out of character for my aunt, and we did not know what to think of this. She apparently had sent him several videos in adult nature to him. Then the crisis happened. Nicholas told her that there was a terrible mix-up and his bank had been compromised, and his life savings of his account had been stolen by a group of scammers. He said he reported it to the Thai police, but they didn't believe him and they took his passport from him. They suspected he was lying about the loss of money, and Jane urged him to call the bank in the States and file a report. But he said the Thai police were wanting $1,000 to return his passport to him as it was some sort of processing fee for, quote, wasting their time. My aunt ended up sending the money to some woman in Thailand who Nicholas said was the police captain. Suddenly, he was able to obtain his passport and promised her marriage when he returned home and even asked her if she would marry him if he was a poor man. My aunt, of course, was in love with this man, or the idea he presented to her. This kept going on, and as the days went on, she sent more iTunes cards, and in the course of maybe 2 weeks, she had sent thousands and thousands of dollars in iTunes cards. It was to the point she was struggling financially. She never told any of us about him, and there were texts where he told her to keep their relationship a secret until they could be together, and then they would announce their engagement to the world. She kept sending him videos and would do everything he asked her in the videos. It's sad because she did this to keep him interested in her. He then had asked her for $10,000, stating that his company had fired him due to a small mistake in the contract that he had written. He blamed her, and he told her that because they talked so late into the night and that she kept him up so late, he was sleep deprived and he made mistakes in the contract, and it cost the company millions. So his boss fired him, revoked his flight ticket, stopped paying for the hotel he was staying in. He was confused and didn't know what to do. He told her that he was going to be thrown out of the hotel the next day and that since he's not in Atlanta to fix his bank account, he'll be stranded. He asked her for money to buy himself a flight home, pay the fines. The government apparently had fined him due to not getting the correct permits for the building contract and the oil pipeline, and to help him get a hotel while he could get a flight booked home soon. He used manipulation to make her feel guilty as if she was at fault. My aunt told him that she doesn't have that kind of money and she's struggling financially as it is from helping him so much with his iTunes cards and the $1,000 she sent. This is when Nicholas went from her Prince Charming to a nightmare. He told her that if she doesn't send $10,000, he will post all the videos she's made for him on websites and then post them on her social media pages so everyone can see what a disgusting woman she is. He then started a barrage of hateful messages breaking her down, how he's the only man who'll stay with her, but he needs her to take accountability for her actions, and it's because of her that he's in this situation and lost his job because she had forced him to talk all night long. It's amazing how manipulative this scammer was. My aunt decided and ended up pleading with him, and she really did not have that kind of money. She told him she could help him get a flight home at maybe $2,000, but she'd have to take out a loan. Nicholas told her to go to the bank and take out $10,000, but she explained to him she doesn't have enough collateral or a high enough credit score to take a loan out that large. He basically kept on telling her to sell her car, jewelry, and whatever possessions she had that would get money for him, and that it's her fault, and he knew that she would be able to make this money happen. He then told her while he waits for her to get the 10 grand to go get him a $100 iTunes card as he needs to make some calls. She told him she's broke right now and can't even afford a $100 card as she sent so many to him over this relationship. Nicholas told her that he would be selling the videos that she made instead and hopes he can get a little money for her videos. She was horrified and begged him not to do that. Jane ended up screaming and yelling at him in a panic, and she panicked more. Succumbing to this panic, she took out several credit card loans and payday loans. She ended up getting a total of $8,500, which was shy of the 10 grand that he demanded. He seemed, though, to be satisfied with this, and he told her that she had to send it via a money transfer agent to someone in Bangkok, which this woman would then help him get his hotel and flights. She ended up sending the money through a Thai transfer service called Wise. It was something I had never heard of, but she did several small transfers and it totaled roughly $8,200 after the processing fees. The money went to some woman in Bangkok, which Nicholas said was some sort of agent for Americans to book flights and hotel payments. Jane was in dire financial trouble. Nicholas still promised marriage and a dream life, but by this time he was very verbally cruel to her. He told her that he needs another $500 iTunes card, and my aunt told him she just can't. She's suffering without food, and her utilities were close to being shut off. This scammer told her it's a good thing that she clearly didn't need to buy any more food, and that she needed to move into a small, cheaper apartment. At this point, the relationship was extremely toxic. She was clinging to the thought of having a man by her side, but being horribly treated by this money hungry scammer who she thought was her dream man. Jane reached out to me, asking if I'd be able to loan her $1,000 as she was trying to catch up on her bills. She told me work had slowed down, which sounded weird to me as she's always been at the same job for years and worked the same schedule. Jane has never asked me or anyone in our family for money, and she sounded quite distraught, and I told her I'll help. Times are tough, and maybe she did fall behind on things. I ended up transferring the money to her directly through money transfer at Walmart. She got the money and called me once she got home from picking it up. I asked her what's going on, and I told her I can come out and visit and check on you as I had some vacation time coming up. Jane said no, to wait, because her fiance was coming home soon and she wanted me to visit when he was here. Well, this is the first time I had heard about this. When I questioned her, she got very defensive and said that I would know more when he's here and that they're keeping things a surprise, but she asked me to maybe visit next month. So I set out a plan to visit. She said Nicholas wanted to surprise the family that he's a bigwig in the oil industry and they had met on IG. I asked if she's video chatted with this man, and she said yes. Don't question things. He's very real and very sweet. Well, I pretended to be happy for her, but in reality, I was highly concerned about who this person was. I squealed with excitement and said, "You have to show me his photo. Is he a hot, handsome man?" Jane went ahead and sent me the photo of Nicholas, and he was very handsome and almost too perfect. And at the time, I saved the photo and told her she's one lucky lady. We had planned for me to visit when Nicholas was there, and she said she'd let me know. I talked this over with other family members, and that's when I decided this sounds too weird. I started looking into the photo of Nicholas, and that's when I discovered the photo was of Gary Barlow, who was a 90s boy band singer from the band Take That. I started to alert other family members to what was going on. My cousin told me that my Aunt Jane called her 2 days ago asking for a loan of $500, which she said was to help pay her gas bill, as it had been unusually cold and her heating bill was higher than expected. And she had loaned her the money and thought nothing of it as it had been an unusually cold spring. I told her about my loan to her, and all those red flags were there. I called Jane to check in with her, and she pushed me about visiting. She kept saying Nicholas would be home soon, and then when he's here, I can come out and visit. But also that Nicholas told her they were going to fly to Greece for a vacation soon as he arrived. I told her that maybe we should meet and you could spend time with him before flying to another country with this man. And I asked her if she has any other photos of him as he's just too handsome. Jane told me that she did, but made me promise not to tell anyone else as Nicholas would be angry if any of her family knew about him and he really wanted it to be a surprise. I promised her, and she trusted in me and sent me for more photos of Nicholas, and I confirmed what I knew, that it was photos of Gary. I didn't tell her right away on the phone. I was really scared for her mental state if I just threw this all onto her. It wasn't an hour later that my brother called me. He lives in Missouri and asked me if Jane had been doing okay. He shared with me that she called him and asked about selling her car and if he'd had any experience with these online car sales companies that come pick your car up for cash, and what he thought she could get for her car. She called him because my brother works in car finance for a major dealership, and I guess she thought maybe he would have some insight. She told him that she was having some financial issues and really was tired of driving and wanted to start walking to work to lose weight, and selling her car would be a great idea. It would make her exercise to work. By this time, the alarm bells were all going off. I shared with him what was going on and what our cousin also was dealing with regards to Jane. I decided the best thing would be for me to visit without announcing. I flew out to see her and I rented a car. I ended up calling her when I was in town and told her I wanted to visit as a surprise and I couldn't get any other time off work but this week. Jane was frazzled but excited to see me, but she told me Nicholas hasn't come here yet, but he would be arriving next week and I was a week too soon. I told her I'm here to visit her, not Nicholas, and came to her house. The Jane I knew was different. Her home was half packed with boxes and a lot of her stuff had been moved or was just gone. When I asked her, she told me that Nicholas wants her to move to Atlanta and to sell her things as he will buy her new luxury items. Her TV she loved so much, and some of her furniture and personal items were gone. I was in shock if I'm being honest. On her fridge were photos of Nicholas and a scrapbook she made with their photos together. They were Photoshop pictures of them together with hearts around them. She shared that Nicholas made the photos for her and he was wrapping up his personal business and flying home as he was able to fix things with his boss and got his job back, and she was so excited for him. None of it made sense, and I decided to sit with her, and I had all the information in my travel bag, which was about to shake her world. I calmly sat with her and told her that the photos of Nicholas belonged to a singer. I pulled out page after page of photos of the Take That singer, and her so called Nicholas were the same photos. And I could see the heartbreak in her face, but she started to make excuses for him, saying that I was mistaken and that this singer had actually stolen Nicholas's identity and all sorts of crazy talk. I asked her why she was borrowing money from different relatives and why suddenly she had no money and what was really going on and how much were she sending to Nicholas. I'm not sure if it was the full confrontation that made her open up, but she started crying and sharing with me her real ordeal. She let me read her messages and told me that Nicholas was blackmailing her, that she had made some videos which she wasn't proud of, and he was making threats to post them online, then would ask for money, she would send it, and then he would be loving again, then ask for more iTunes cards or to wire money, and if she didn't, he would make threats to expose her with the videos. This Nicholas went as far as finding her boss and sending him messages via social media saying that he has videos of his employee. And when Jane didn't have any more money to send, Nicholas ended up sending one of her videos to her work email, and her boss and several of her coworkers had seen the video. Jane had quit her job and didn't tell anyone. Yet this Nicholas was still demanding money, and she didn't know what to do. She was selling her stuff to cover her rent and bills and sending him money that relatives had loaned her to keep him from ruining her life. That he would make threats to send the videos to her family and friends, and then he would post them on groups that catered to her local neighborhood, like neighborhood apps. He was in all the apps she was in. And it was a neighborhood app for her area, and she was scared. I finally took charge and called this Nicholas. A man answered. I told him off. I told him, Jane, that this man is not European. He's not German. And he had a very thick accent. I started yelling at him to leave her alone, and he started to make threats to me and laughed, calling her horrible names and that he's posting her videos all over the internet. I told him I know whose photos he used, and he's nothing but a scammer and a liar. I told him I was calling the police, and that didn't faze him. He laughed hysterically. To make a long story short, this guy posted my aunt's personal adult videos on neighborhood apps, and she was on, and several people who knew my aunt, including her neighbors, viewed the videos before they were reported and removed. It took about 4 days to get them removed from the neighborhood group, and by then most everyone had seen them. He posted the video to her FB wall and posted them on relatives' walls as well. This guy was a real evil man, and my aunt had a total breakdown from it. She financially was in debt, her neighbors had seen the videos of her, and she was in a terrible situation. To make it worse, she didn't live in a big town, and so a lot of people knew her. I ended up letting our relatives know the situation, and she gave me permission to do so, and we ended up pulling together like the family we are. I moved Aunt Jane out to Washington to live with me for a while, and she got a fresh start. The downside to things is by the time this ordeal was over, She had sent him over $30,000 in cash and gift cards and had numerous loans. She was sending money to Bangkok, Thailand, but also had wired money to different people in the United States too. We think these people were either involved in the scam or they were money mules or victims themselves. My aunt had to change her number, shut down all of her social media as well. We ended up blocking anyone who tried to message myself or our family about her. These people, these scammers, they were relentless and kept on for months after the whole thing had ended. It really changed her, and in some ways, she had a total change of life. She's doing better now and paying off her debt. However, she refuses to go back on social media and is living a bit of a reclusive life, more so than before. I do fear if she returns to social media, the scammer will be waiting for her. These guys are relentless, and this one was especially evil. I wanted to share her encounter so others see how bad these guys truly are and how they use your low self esteem to manipulate you into doing things you'd never dream of. Thank you. We'd like to thank this lady for sharing the story of what her Aunt Jane went through. A lot of times, scammers can be very manipulative, and if you aren't feeling great about yourself or you have low self esteem, they will definitely try to play on that and be your best friend, your best boyfriend, your future husband, and then they start going in for the money and requests. If you'd like to share your encounter, you can find us scammingscammers@gmail.com. You can also find us on FB, Scamming Cyber Education. Our inbox is there as well. Drop us an email, show any screenshots, photos, whatever you have, so we can validate your story and we will narrate it into a video. Sometimes your story can help other people who are struggling in the same way. Until next time, stay safe, and if someone asks you to do something that feels uncomfortable, don't do it. Just block and move on.